Why haven't you asked to meet my mom yet?
Well, she hates me, V.
She doesn't hate you. She just believes you to be of inferior blood stock for making the incubi that will lead our people.
Well, gee, when you say it like that, it really makes me want to meet her.
Yeah, she should meet you.
V, I was being sarcastic.
No. If she met you, then she would know what a desirable match you are. She would see that she was wrong, and then she would approve of our union. It's perfect. We can have a dinner, and you and your father can come and meet my mother and my sister.
Does Talia have to be there? Sister kind of, what's a nice way to put it, scares the shit out of me.
Talia will be on her best behavior, I promise. Do you think your dad will actually show up, though? I know he's busy and that he doesn't think much of you for some reason, but I feel like if he's there, then he might add some weight to Mother's opinion. He can be charming when he wants to be.
I guess if he's there, then your mother and he will at least have something they agree on.
I won't let them bully you, my little vampire bat. You leave everything to me, okay? By the end of this dinner, maybe even your father will have changed his opinion of you.
I'll have to practice my pig shape so I can jump off the roof. You know, 'cause that would only happen if pigs flew.
I was in bed, drowsing in the area between sleep and awake, when I heard voices floating over me. They were voices I knew, weren't they? I wasn't sure. The drowse I was in felt deeper than usual, and somehow different than the warm, lethargic state before waking. The feeling was neither confusing nor different, and as I became more aware of myself, I also was aware of another part of myself that was making sure that the world knew that it was awake, alert, and very enthusiastic. My mind swirled into a sea of colors and stars, and I swore that I smelt the perfume of Sarah through the haze. That perfume that weaved its way from my mind and down my chest and caressed another part of me.
Are you almost done? Do you need me to?
I'm fully capable of doing it myself, thank you.
I mean, clearly not. I'd have been finished and cleaned up 10 minutes ago. When I grip a man,
Please, Mother, I don't want to hear any of that.
I'm only...
But the voices kind of got harder to hear as I concluded. It happened pretty suddenly, and the colorful array in my vision, along with the perfume, disappeared like sand in a high wind, and all that I had been experiencing simply drifted away into nothing, lessening some of my dreamy stupors.
Took you long enough. Damn it, he's waking up. I told you the dosage wasn't right.
Shit. You have to go.
The voices dissipated, and the words got foggier and further away. Now I must have fallen back asleep because the next thing that I knew, Mom was pounding on the door and telling me that it was after 9. Well, pounding might be the wrong word. Mom doesn't really pound. It was more like a loudish rattle as she thumped on the door.
Sweetie, did you sleep through your alarm? You've got a 10 o'clock written on the kitchen calendar, and I don't want you to be late.
I sat up quickly, reaching for clothes as I tried to get ready at lightning speed. The second my feet hit the floor, however, something felt off. I was a little stumbly, my head was feeling foggy, and I was wondering if I was coming down with something. I had a terrible case of cotton mouth, and my head felt like it was full of clouds. But still, I got dressed, stumbled a couple times in the process, and came into the kitchen at 9:45 to find that Mom had cooked breakfast. Bacon, eggs, hash browns, toast, and thank God, coffee. I drank half the glass by the time that she sat down, and was starting on the eggs when she came to sit down with her own plate.
My, someone's hungry. I take it your date went well last night?
And I nodded, swallowing my bite before trying to talk with my mouth full. Yeah, it was great.
Well, maybe you could bring her home one evening so I could meet her.
Mom hedged, smiling as she sipped her own coffee. The coffee was starting to clear my head a little, and that's when I remembered. Oh, well, I actually invited her to dinner this weekend. She looked over the top of her cup, intrigued.
Really? That's fantastic. Oh, I'll have to cook my famous brisket and get the good china ready. Oh, this is just going to be so great.
It's just dinner, Mom. There's really no reason to freak out.
That's where you're wrong, kiddo. If this girl is something special, then there is absolutely reason to make everything special. She could be part of our family soon, and I want to put on a dinner that she'll remember for her whole marriage.
Whoa, I said. We haven't even started talking about marriage yet. This is just dinner, nothing too special. And Mom winked at me, looking downright impish before gasping as she looked at the clock.
Oh, it's nearly 10. You better get down there and open the doors. Don't want to look like a slouch in front of a new client.
I took the plate with me, folding all the food into the toast so that way I could eat it like a sandwich and hopefully not spill any of it on me. Luckily, the client was running a little late too, and as I sat down and took the information for their very normal funeral, a school teacher who died in a car accident, I made a mental note to warn Sarah about what to expect. Mom could be a little excitable, and I still remembered when she tried to make some intricate beef dish for my sister's husband, only to end up cooking meatloaf instead. He had raved about it, saying he never had anything that didn't sound like it came from Michelin stars. I hoped Mom wouldn't get too crazy, and as I waited on my noon appointment, a less normal affair for a Dwarven smith, I shot her a text just to give her a little heads up. I had barely put my phone down when it buzzed ominously.
Tell her not to go too crazy. I'm not allergic to anything except water chestnuts, and I'm not a vegetarian or anything, so no worries there either. I'm sure whatever she makes will be fine.
I nodded, telling her that I would convey the message and that Mom was very excited to meet her.
What's she like? My own mother is such a mess that it would be nice to have just a normal person I could think of like a mom.
I thought about it for a moment, finally settling on the truth. Mom's a strong lady, but she's always so warm. She protected us a lot as kids, making sure that we were safe and loved. She likes to help people. Anyone at the church could tell you that. And if she feels like you're part of the family, she'll bend heaven and earth for you. That one took a little while to answer, and I was hearing the sound of heavy bootsteps walk through the showroom when she sent me back her response.
I can't wait to meet her. Looking forward to Saturday.
I smiled as someone battered the door with a fist much heavier than my mom, and told her that I'd see her then.
Nothing spins like Dwarven gold,
Louis said, holding one of the long, thin bars up to the light.
You know they produce the true gold, right? What we make is cute and all, but they bring out the highest quality in their gold.
Well, they gave me about 30 of those, so I hope that you have enough. And Louis looked wounded, but I knew that it was an act.
I'm insulted you think I wouldn't be able to change such a paltry sum. I got Breaking Bad levels of money hidden in my house.
I was glad because the dwarves had paid me about $500,000 worth of gold. Now, granted, about $350,000 of it was to secure a solid gold coffin from someone named Athorian, something or other. But I still stood to make quite a bit off of the funeral. It was going to be held in a few weeks as well, which was how long it would take to not only make the coffin, but also it wasn't going to hinder my weekend plans.
So, how's it been going lately? You alright?
I nodded, not really sure how to take the question. Louis had never been interested in my personal life before, especially not after the Skinwalker thing. Yeah, pretty good, I guess. Why?
No reason, just... someone asked me about you the other day. Wasn't the sort of people I would want asking about me.
What sort of people? I asked, leaning against the wall as Louis got the money together. He was loading them in this big green duffel bag, and I was praying that I wouldn't get pulled over on the way home, so I didn't have to explain them.
Well, I'm sure you've heard there's a new guy on the scene. These Chosen Ones, a vampire clan that's on the rise.
My blood ran a little cold. Yeah, I've heard about them. They hit a big crew from Cerberus not long ago, right?
Nah, Tyler. They didn't hit them. They scourged them.
Scourged? I asked, not familiar with the term.
When vampires set out to destroy something, they scourge it. They wipe it out. They scrub it from the board. They utterly destroy it. That's what they mean to do to Cerberus. And that's what they've been trying to do to the church as well. I hear a lot of smaller religious outfits have been under attack lately. It's only gonna get worse. The cross has dropped its value by about a quarter since 2 months ago, and that was a currency that only rose since its inception.
Is that the church's currency? I asked, and Louis nodded.
Yeah, most of it's made from the gold they allegedly got from the Crusades and the precious metals that they got from the Templar troves. The church uses it to pay itself, one hand washing the other and so forth. But yeah, the Chosen have really put a damper on their activities, which is rare for a bunch of vamps.
I hear they're, trying to squeeze out other vampires, too.
You've been talking to Cory, it sounds like. Yeah, they hit Malcolm's business ventures hard, and he ain't happy about it. Despite his ability to adapt Malcolm's old world, most of your old world vamps won't attack the blood like that. Vampires don't attack each other, and they certainly don't hinder their business ventures. Problem is, these guys are out of Malcolm's league, and going up against them would be a bad idea for him.
Sounds like these guys are going to be taking over everything before long. And Louis shrugged.
Dad told me once about a pack of vamps who were getting pretty troublesome. He said the Vatican sent out these guys in full armor with assault rifles and broadswords. They came to Dad to trade some crosses for cash, and he heard a few days later that there'd been a big explosion at some old factory on the Canadian border. It was pretty common knowledge that a group of vamps were using it as a base of operation, and Dad said he figured they'd gone out there to put them down. So don't be too worried. Your buddy Pierce, he probably knows a thing or two about the Pope's black hats and wetworks operation. Hell, he might have been part of some of them.
I nodded, still not sure why they had asked about me, though. Why did they want to know about me, though? Doesn't sound like they were looking for funeral arrangements.
I think maybe someone told them that you have a contact with old Malcolm, and maybe that there was something interesting about your blood. I don't know, but that was what they asked me about, and that's all I told them. Before you ask, I didn't tell them where you lived or nothing. Not like they probably don't already know.
Well, thanks for the heads up, Louis. Hopefully their interest was just academic.
Yeah, hopefully. Be careful with that. I'd hate for you to get robbed in my front yard.
I told him that I would be and headed out. Aside from meeting with the guy, or dwarf, who was supposed to make the coffin, I also had to get some ingredients for dinner on Saturday. Mom was pulling out all the stops, smoking a Boston butt for my girlfriend, and she had left me with a long list of items that I would need to get before tonight. If she went this far for a dinner, I shudder to think what she'd be like if we actually got married. I was putting on my tie when I got a text from Sarah.
Ooh, spooky. Never had dinner in a mortuary.
I smiled, laughing as I sent her an emoji with the tongue sticking out. Not actually in the mortuary, but pretty damn close. She sent me a picture of herself in the parking lot, asking how she looked. She was wearing a green dress, one that looked like velvet but wasn't, and she had her hair down and it was flowing behind her. I told her that she looked just fine. Then she sent me another picture, one that she clearly, hopefully, had taken earlier in her bathroom that made me check behind me to make sure that no one had snuck in my room.
Just a little something to look forward to later.
I made sure my phone was closed when I went in to go to the kitchen, telling Mom that Sarah was here. Mom had put up a big spread. The Boston butt smelled delicious, and she paired it with mixed vegetables, mashed potatoes, and a strawberry cheesecake for dessert. Mom took her apron off, asking if she looked okay, just as a knock came at the door. I assured her that she looked just fine, and I nearly ran to the door as I opened it to find a vision on the other side.
Delivery! One girlfriend ready for dinner.
I pulled her in close, and we shared a kiss, or two, before I took her hand and led her into the kitchen. Mom was back in front of the open, taking some peas out of the microwave, and she smiled, welcoming Sarah to our home when something strange happened. It was like watching the weather change all of a sudden, like storm clouds rolling across my sunny day. And as the peas slipped out of her hands, Sarah and I jumped back as they cascaded across the floor. Mom, are you okay? I stepped forward, thinking that she might have had a stroke, but she shook her head and tried to put a smile back into place. It didn't seem to be working, but she was giving it her best, and she bent down to get the Pyrex that she had the peas in.
Oh my, silly me. I must have had a fugue moment for a second. Sarah, it's nice to meet you. So very nice. Tyler, I'm sorry. Can you clean this up for me? I think I need to visit the bathroom for a moment and splash some water on my face. And she shuffled off, swaying a little as she went, and I got Sarah seated as I cleaned up the peas.
Well, that was quite an entrance,
Sarah said, getting up to get the dustpan as I chased the little green circles. Sorry, she's been cooking all afternoon. She was really excited to meet you, but I guess it all got a little bit to me too much. We got the peas up as Mom got herself together, and when she returned, I noticed that she was wearing a bracelet that I hadn't seen in a long time. She also had put perfume on as well, something sweet that I didn't think that I ever smelled on her before. She apologized, saying that she was just a little overworked, and took her seat as she invited us to come eat. And it smelled amazing. And as Sarah took up her fork, I saw Mom make a face, not seeming to believe what she had seen. Sarah looked confused, glancing down at the fork as if to make sure that it was okay, but it was a completely normal fork.
So, Sarah, what is it that you do?
My mom asked, not eating, but lifting food to her mouth while she just stared at Sarah like she might burst into flames.
Oh, I'm working part-time at Shelley's nursery. We mostly do flower arrangements, but we also rehome small trees and conduct general horticulture studies.
I see,
she said, fork going down and up as it continued to ferry the same food back and forth.
Tyler, he speaks very highly of you, and I understand that you've been spending a lot of time with my son.
The statement sounded more like an accusation, and I looked at my mom as if to ask, what was this even about? She sounded disapproving, accusing even, and I wasn't sure where this was coming from. Mom hadn't treated any of my siblings' partners like this, so why start now? And Sarah coughed a little, clearly not sure how to answer the question either.
Something wrong, dear? Perhaps the blackberries in my perfume have you a little versalimped. Maybe it's the proximity to my four-leaf clover charm.
Mrs. Garvey, I don't know what you're trying to get at, but...
Sarah began, but my mom cut her off as she smacked the table with her palm.
Don't play coy with me, dear. What are your intentions with my son? He's no cradle babe, so I assume it's a more devious plan than that.
Mom, I said, getting concerned. What in the world are you talking about?
It's not my fault, Tyler. Your father wanted all this cloak and dagger nonsense, so I can't expect you to recognize the signs. But if you're going to live in your father's world, then you need to smarten up. It's pretty clear your date is a fae, and I won't let you put yourself in danger like this. It was bad enough when you were inviting Hellspawn over, but this is too far.
Sarah pushed back from the table, swallowing a bite as she gave my mother a very hard look.
First off, ma'am, that is extremely narrow-minded. Second...
She caught her breath, it coming out a little bit quicker.
I am...
She gasped, clutching her throat.
I...
But she had dropped back to her chair, her breath wheezing in and out. Sarah! I came around the table trying to find something to do. What's wrong? Are you okay?
I told you, Tyler, Mom said. Fairies can't abide blackberry or four-leaf clovers. She's fine. The trinkets only...
But Sarah stopped gasping, her breath coming in shorter and shorter pulls. She pointed to something on the table, and I saw it before my brain caught up. Mom's mixed vegetables. She had chestnuts in them. Damn it. Do you have an EpiPen? I asked, but Sarah shook her head. We need to call an ambulance.
She can leave whenever she wants. Distance from the talismans will...
She is having an allergic reaction, Mom! I shouted, one of the few times that I've ever yelled at my mother. She's going to die if we don't help her!
But...
Mom said, sounding unsure.
But Faye don't...
She is a changeling, Mom! She's still mostly human and she's going to be dead if we don't help her! And Mom looked around, not sure what to do, and then disappeared up the hall after a few seconds of dithering. Sarah, I asked, not sure if I should start chest compressions, look for Benadryl, or just stay there with her. She was crying, tears running down her face. It seemed so wrong that she was about to strangle on the floor of my mother's happy little cow kitchen. And as the smiling cows looked on impotently, I tried to decide what I should do. My girlfriend beginning to turn purple as she drew in less oxygen, and I felt like I might be on the verge of a panic attack when I heard fast-moving house shoes approaching, and for half a second I saw a knife in her hand as she knelt beside, but she had already plunged it in before I could stop her. Mom depressed the plunger and I saw that it was a needle with a gaudy label. Sarah gasped a few more times but began to breathe normally pretty quickly. And we both looked at my mother in surprise as she pulled the needle out, pulling back the plunger as she recapped it and tossed it on the table. She looked embarrassed and a little ashamed. But the question that came was the farthest from what I wanted to ask. Why do you have an epinephrine pen?
I have a lot of things, Tyler. I have first aid kits, emergency kits, and I have things to protect the family in case the things your father does business with remember that we are eatable. I am prepared for any situation. But apparently I wasn't prepared for this, like I thought. And she looked away ashamed of what she had almost done. But, to both our surprises, Sarah started to laugh. And I looked down at her cheeks broken by the occasional cough, as she shook her head.
I've got some reading to catch up on that. I missed the part Fae lore where it says they can be killed by water chestnuts.
It was my turn to chuckle a little. No, that was on me. I forgot to tell Mom that you were allergic to them. And we all laughed a little at that. I don't think that we could have helped ourselves. The whole situation was just too weird. Sarah stood up, getting back into her chair, and Mom got her a fresh plate, avoiding the mixed veggies this time as she served up more of the meat.
So, how'd you even know I was part Fae? Because I gotta tell you, I didn't even know until I was 18.
And Mom tried to smile, but her face still seemed at odds with itself.
I was taught from a young age to see the signs. Vampires, fae, ghouls, anything that can look human has a tell. You've got the ears, whether you know it or not. Plus, you just feel different. With the succubi, it was the scent of brimstone. With the lichens, it's the slight stench of animal. It's something you never really lose, I suppose.
And Sarah nodded.
Well, you were sort of right. I am half Fae. My mother is a city noble. My father was human, however, so I get to make a choice. I am leaning towards human, if we're being honest, and your son has a lot to do with that.
Mom looked at me surprised, and I was a little surprised too.
There's a lot of drama in fairyland, as you know. But I really didn't have much to live for out here. The human world was lonely. But I think I might have found a reason to stay.
Mom smiled, and I saw some of her apprehension melt away.
I am very sorry, Sarah. I misjudged you. Years of chasing off creatures that tried to lure my husband away may have hardened me against them a little. Faye especially.
And she looked away, trying to swallow the malice that I'd seen rise up. And she looked back when Sarah reached over to take her hand.
Your husband? Did he?
No,
Mom said.
It was my oldest. Stephen had met her after a service, not even realizing that she was different. He was young, barely 16, and she twisted him and turned him into something that I just didn't know.
I tried to remember and vaguely recalled Stephen sneaking out to meet a pale, beautiful girl on the edge of the forest. Mostly what I remembered was the shouting between him and my parents. They caught him leaving through his bedroom window, skipping school, and acting way out of character. They had finally put a stop to it, but it hadn't actually stopped until the girl had suddenly lost interest in him.
Jesus,
I whispered. Did he know? And Mom shook her head.
No, your father was as secretive with the rest of them as he was with you. Your dad was at his wit's end, but I knew what she was and how to keep her away. That was the year that I planted the blackberry bushes and the ivory. Do you remember, Tyler?
And I nodded. Yeah. Dad liked the blackberries, but thought the ivory made us look pretentious.
I may have also spread iron nails around the property every day while you were at school for a month. She was, apparently, no changeling, and the iron and smell kept her away. We kept an eye on Stephen for a while, and as her influence left, he did somewhat return back to normal. I swore I would never let it happen again, and I see that I was mistaken in this case, and I am sorry,
she said again.
I am so...
But Sarah squeezed her hand, and then, when they smiled at each other, I knew that everything was fine between her and Sarah.
Ma'am, cut me a piece of that cheesecake and I think we can call it even.
Well, that was a little better than I expected.
What, you expected something worse?
Well, you're still alive, so I suppose it didn't go completely off the rails. And she laughed, kissed my cheek as I opened the door to her car.
Well, brace yourself, mister. Eventually you'll have to meet my mom, and she might actually eat you alive.
And I laughed, but Sarah only chuckled. And I watched her drive away before heading back inside. The night had been hectic, nearly fatal. But what else did I really expect? Every day at Garvey Mortuary was life and death, after all. Why should introducing my mother to my girlfriend be any different? I reached to the bottom of the stairs when headlights fell across me again, and I turned, thinking that Sarah had forgotten something, but it wasn't Sarah. A black town car was careening through the parking lot. The headlights were pinning me like a bug, and when the brakes squealed to a stop, I was surprised to see Cory behind the wheel, with Malcolm in the passenger seat looking beat to hell. What kind of fresh hell was this?
Cornelius, I just don't understand why I should be bothered.
Cory sighed. Being in his dad's study always put him at ill ease. It wouldn't have been so bad if the place didn't emanate an air or forced creepiness. It was like his father's interior designer shopped for most of his accent pieces at the set of Tim Burton films. The whole place was very monochrome, black and white, wary for supremacy. with dark woods for the non-sitting furniture and overly puffy spots for the stuff that you were supposed to sit on. It looked like the cover of an emo rock album, and his father was all for it.
Dad, you're my only living parent. It would mean a great deal to me to have you at this dinner. I've already met Miss Victoria. She's a lovely girl. She has poor taste in men, but that's hardly a crime. What? Would you like to rub my nose in the fact that you've managed to fool some beautiful woman into being seen in public with you? Congratulations, brava! You might be my spawn after all.
And Cory closed his eyes, counting to 10, and asked the Dark Lord to give him the strength not to commit patricide.
Father, I'm planning to marry this girl, and I think it would be prudent if you met Mrs. Robinson before...
Malcolm Von Trask turned his head so slowly that Cory expected to hear tendons popping, and they fixed upon him with a look that he would have reserved for Cory if he told him the devil himself was downstairs.
Did you just say your intended is the daughter of Mrs. Robinson? Yeah?
Cory said, not really understanding the act here.
Mrs. Valeria Robinson, voted Hell's Most Eligible Bachelorette, winner of 4 Golden Calves at her various adult film roles. The woman responsible for much corruption of mortals that they gave her a place in the lust ring over the commemorative glory hole. I suppose. I've never actually met her. She doesn't seem to be very fond of me. She claims I'm... Cornelius, after some thought, I have decided to attend this dîner of yours. Family is very important to me, as well you know, and it would set an unacceptable precedent if I did not meet your intended and her delicious, esteemed family. When is it again? Saturday? Capital! Will they be hosting us in hell, or do they have a mortal residence? I believe they have a house near here? Top shelf. With any luck, you'll have a new betrothed and a new mother by the end of the evening. Baka. Dad, no, that's not... Don't worry. I won't marry her until after your nuptials, though I cannot promise not to bet her. Derek!
He called, and Cory could practically hear the Renfield as he tromped up the stairs. Derek came in, pectorals positively gleaming with sweat. Cory had always kind of thought that he kind of looked like Guile from Street Fighter if Guile had been on a lot more steroids. Derek's head seemed to have eaten his neck at some point, and his arms seemed incapable of dipping past the level of his shoulders. He was a big dumb meathead who spoke mostly in monosyllables, and Malcolm made it pretty clear that he only kept him around so that way he didn't have to overexert himself. His father was more than capable of hurdling mortal thugs, but sometimes a large, growling brute helped people find someone else to menace.
Yeah,
Derek grunted, looming in the doorway like a gargoyle.
Derek, be a lamb and get my crushed velvet suit and take it to the cleaners. I need it by Saturday. As a good fellow, and get my tailored Armani out as well. Cornelius will need to look his best if he intends to impress.
As you wish, my lord.
Derek grunted, his eyes trailing down to Cory before grunting,
Nerd.
and then stomping off.
Suddenly, I'm not sure inviting you was a great idea.
Cory moaned, wincing as Malcolm put a hand on his shoulder and helped him up.
Nonsense, my boy, nonsense. By the end of this dinner, your future mother-in-law and hopefully future stepmother will be singing your praises. My boy, it's about time you did something right, and you have certainly exceeded expectations this time. Why, I don't think Saturday could arrive quick enough.
He trumpeted, walking out of his study and leaving Cory in a deep state of dread. Saturday was, very likely, going to be a disaster, and Cory just hoped that Victoria would still talk to him after Saturday was over.
And Victoria wanted him there, but now I feel like he's gonna ruin it, and I just don't know what I should do.
The blood was sliding up the tube and into the little bag as Cory spilled it out. He had been so nervous that he hadn't even thought about how gross it was taking blood from someone. It had actually become pretty easy the longer that he did it, so he supposed that there was something to be said for this job. Well, if you're afraid that he would ruin it, then why'd you even invite him? There was no accusation to it, just interest. And this was why Cory liked talking to Tyler. Tyler never made him feel stupid. Tyler never made him feel like a failure. He just tried to help him, and that meant a lot to Cory. Cory never had a lot of friends, and it was nice to know that maybe that he wouldn't have to spend his long life with no one to talk to.
I don't know. Victoria thought it would be a good idea if our parents met. How was I supposed to know that her mother was one of hell's most famous silver screen stars?
What? I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. I imagine the job market for succubi is pretty limited. Plus, in between takes, it gives you free time for corrupting.
Dad thinks he's gonna woo Mrs. Robinson. I swear, if I end up in some contrived romance novel bullshit, I'll walk into the sunrise.
Nah, do it at sunset, Tyler said with a wink. Much more maudlin. They laughed then as Cory removed the needle and covered the wound. Sometimes a little talk with a friend was all he really needed to put things into perspective. As Malcolm and Cory rode in the limo Victoria had kindly arranged for them, the town faded away, giving way to an expansive landscape. Cory's gaze wandered over empty fields that would be bustling with animals by day, quiet farmhouses where families enjoyed their meals, and dimly lit trailers where people relaxed with TV and canned beer. He relished these hidden pockets of the world that lay beyond the reach of civilization. Some of his fondest memories were of late-night drives in his dad's delivery truck, savoring the serene darkness and the secrets that it held. His father, who thrived amidst the ceaseless city bustle, would never understand Cory's fascination with the quiet night. But for Cory, there was no better way to spend these hours than exploring the hidden life of the dark. Their journey soon brought them to a community on the outskirts of another city, where the homes were far more impressive than the one that he and Malcolm called home. Their house, which could be generously described as a mansion, was really just a sprawling residence that had seen better days. Once it might have looked grand in a more upscale neighborhood, but now it seemed to be a relic of a time when the area was thriving. Malcolm didn't mind. The house had its share of break-ins, and occasionally, the burglars who attempted to rob it vanished without a trace. Malcolm's usual clients, who brought his more mundane goods, also sometimes disappeared, but their absence barely stirred the community. In truth, Malcolm and Cory lived in a fortress, defending against the occasional raids from the local miscreants. The Robinsons, on the other hand, resided in a gated enclave near the Ohio River. In their exclusive neighborhood, no home was likely valued at less than $1 million, and many were priced well beyond that. The estate grounds were vast, dotted with enormous mansions and equipped with private docks and flotillas brimming with every kind of boat and watercraft. As they passed a particularly dazzling property, Malcolm perked up, his eyes widening with the kind of delight usually reserved for a child unwrapping their dream gift on Christmas morning.
Drink it in, my boy. This is where the rich and powerful play.
They pulled through a set of white marble gates and onto a lush green lawn that looked deep enough to roll in. As Cory watched, peacocks wandered by, their plumage up and showing, and you could see a pool just sticking out from the back. Cory could see Greek columns surrounding it, the edges done in white marble, and he wondered if the rest was as grand. They pulled up outside of the mansion that made their home look like the crack house that it often was, and a man in a suit nicer than Daryl's opened the door to show them out. "Mr. Von Trask," he monotoned, sniffling as Daryl climbed out. "And guest, I will show you in." He needn't have bothered. They had no sooner come up the stairs when someone squealed and came running up to Cory to throw their arms around him. Even though the suit that he was in poked and prodded by something, and it wasn't until they let go that he saw that it was Victoria in some exotic dress that made her look like a pokey white bird. It left areas of her open to view, midriff, legs, and underboob, as well as her hair that had been teased into a reddish-black cloud that swam about her head.
You made it. Welcome to Chateau Robinson. Oh, hello again, Mr. Von Trask.
Charmed, my dear, utterly charmed. Allow me to introduce my Renfield Darrell. He'll be joining us. I trust that isn't too much of an inquisition.
Oh no, not at all. The cooks have made too much food as it is. Daryl, do you prefer your meat cooked, or...
Rare, he said in his monotone, and Cory growled as his eyes lingered on parts of her a little bit too long. Victoria slipped her arm around his, though, and in that moment, all thoughts of anything but her vanished. And as they stepped into Chateau Robinson, the place practically radiated like a miniature sun. Crystal chandeliers dazzled in the foyer, and everything gleamed in shadows of white and cream. Malco's cane echoed more loudly than usual on the tiles, and he seemed oblivious to the butler's disapproving glances as he led them to dinner. Cory caught glimpses of the opulent interior, a setting room with soaring ceilings and another grand chandelier, a cozy den with a crackling fire and soft lighting, and a dining room where Talia, whom Cory had already met under less favorable circumstances, was perched alongside Mrs. Robinson, whom he hadn't. The family appeared to have embraced a thematic dress code for the evening. They all wore white, sparkling with sequins and jewels, each resembling a different kind of bird. Victoria had gone for a swan look, elegant and graceful. Talia resembled a white raven, her jeweled feathers giving a fierce, almost predatory edge, her neckline sharp and beak-like. Mrs. Robinson, in contrast, looked like a peacock, her bodice shimmering with vibrant colors that accentuated her plumage. She wore a mink stole, a tiara adorned with glittering gems, and her smile had sharpened that outshone Talia's entire ensemble.
Welcome to our home. We are honored to have you.
Cory and Malcolm bowed, Darrow like some golem as he kept his posture unbent.
It is an honor to be had. It's a pleasure to break bread with such a notable family.
I can imagine,
Mrs. Robinson said, spreading her arms to invite them to the huge table. Malcolm and Cory took their seats, Victoria sitting next to Cory, and after looking rather uncomfortable for a few minutes, Darrow pulled out the chair closest to Malcolm and took a seat. Salads came out, and Malcolm picked at his as Cory tucked into his own. Vampires couldn't technically eat food, much in the same way that humans couldn't technically eat dirt. They didn't gain anything from it, but it didn't really hurt them. They could pass it just fine, and, ironically, their sense of taste was vastly improved by their vampiric senses. Mrs. Robinson kept a speculative eye on the trio, and Malcolm returned her attention with his own flirtations. She grimaced as he winked at her over a piece of watercress, pushing the plate away as though she'd lost her appetite.
So, Mr. Von Trask.
Please, call me Malcolm. We're nearly family, it would seem, so settling on pleasantries seems a tad gauche.
She pursed her lips, looking like she would have preferred to stand on ceremony for as long as she could.
What is it you do for work?
And Malcolm went on for a way too long of a rant, in which included over-exaggerated arm gestures, all to explain that he runs a national chain of supply warehouses that employs vampires that allow them to draw a living from ignoble labors.
The mortician is one of your clients, isn't he? I believe he's one of the people Cory brings supplies to.
Quite good of you to take such an interest in the affairs of the rabble. I assume, Malcolm, that most of your profits are in blood.
But of course. What else? Money is nice, but it becomes harder and harder every year to discreetly feed on the rabble. Being paid in blood, why, just makes sense.
Mrs. Robinson gave him a condescending smile as she ate, clearly ignoring the dramatic way that he slurped at his meal.
And you? Cornelius, was it?
Cory, ma'am.
Right. Well, Cory, do you help your father in his endeavors?
Cornelius is second. He has the Ohio route, one of the largest in the region. It's a lot of work, and though I'm loath to admit it, Cornelius has been quite the helper. Having him take over the route has helped me focus on the larger aspects of business, and I couldn't be happier.
Cory looked at his father like he must have misheard him. Was this praise from his old man?
Truly?
Mrs. Robinson said, running a delicate finger over the side of her wine glass.
Well, it is good to hear that he has a head for business.
Cory felt a little surge of pride, something that he was not accustomed to feeling. And when the tread came down, he was looking for the other shoe to fall.
Yes, it is quite a surprise. Cornelius has been such a disappointment before that, so imagine my surprise when he took to the family business so adroitly. Before this little vixen strolled into his life, I was honestly a little worried he'd be sleeping in a coffin for one.
And Cory nodded. There it was.
So, Lady Valeria.
Oh, I believe Mrs. Robinson would do me better.
A perfect segue into my conversational gambit. Do you intend to make a return to adult films anytime soon? I ask because your last film, Hellwalkers of the Red Light District, was such a tour de force of acting and cinematography that it seemed a shame not to do a sequel.
You are a connoisseur of adult films, Mr. Von Trask?
I am, especially when the subject is so alluring.
And so the two talked a little shop, Cory and the Succubi sisters eating as they tried not to pay attention.
So, Talia, I haven't seen you around the house lately.
No, I've been busy. More schemes, sister? You could say that. Plans that need time to incubate.
Victoria raised an eyebrow at her, but she let the subject drop. Talia shot Cory a disdainful look but turned back to her meal. Cory had only spoken to her once, trying to make conversation which had quickly been shut down. Talia had informed him that, in no uncertain terms, that she had nothing for him and found him to be a waste of her sister's time.
She can dally with you if she feels like it's something she must do. But I wouldn't get comfortable. You're a footnote in her story. Never doubt it.
It was hard not to hear her words as they sat in pregnant silence. And when Mrs. Robinson suggested drinks in the den, he was glad for the change in venue. They were positioned around the sitting room. Darrow opted to stand by the window as the succubi sat on one couch and Von Trask on the other.
Excellent wine. I would judge a 1876 Fleur de Mouse. A fine year.
As knowledgeable about your wines as you are your adult films, I see. So, Cornelius, what are your intentions with my daughter? She had set up this ridiculous dinner for some reason, and I assume it is so you can make your intentions public instead of slinking around like a thief in the night.
Well, I had hoped to ask her to marry me eventually. You know, if she'd have me.
And Victoria smiled wide enough to tell him that she would. But Mrs. Robinson looked as if someone had force-fed her a lemon. She looked human enough in the light of the fire, but now, the fire licked at her face. Cory could see the edges of the mask as they tugged, and just beneath her smooth skin and pouty lips lay the red-skinned devil who would drag the unwary to hell after a night of passion.
Very sweet. But I think we both know I could never allow something like that to happen.
Victoria attempted to say something, but Mrs. Robinson quickly cut her off.
I have stood by while you played at love with this creature, but I cannot allow him to complicate you in that way. You are to bear the next generation of incubi, and to accomplish that, you need a mate worthy of the task. These creatures of the Dark Lord are cute in their own way, but they are far from up to the task.
She turned her eyes to Cory, and he shuddered as the pupils turned distinctly cat-like.
You, especially, are a disappointment to your species. A sniveling, spineless little night child who will give my daughter a weak seat and ruin her for the matches I might make.
You don't know me, ma'am.
Oh, I know you, Cornelius Von Trask. You slink through my home while you believe me to be away. You court my daughter without my consent. You do not show yourself to me or make introductions. Yes, I know you. You are a sniveling coward with no care for common courtesies, and
That is quite enough. I will not stand by and hear my blood so abased. Cory may not be the son I wanted, but he is my son. He is vampire. He is Von Trask, and his pedigree stretches from Carpathia across the Germanic countryside into Italy, and finally to this new world. Your daughter is a fine girl, despite whatever upbringing she may have received from you. But I do not believe my son deserves to be the subject of such slanders. Come, Cory, we are leaving. We have suffered quite enough barbs from this harpy and her ilk.
No manners at all. Fine, be gone. You are not welcome here, and I trust I have.
But she stopped as Victoria rose as well, and everyone looked at her. But her look of fury was such that it brooked no argument.
Victoria Amelia Robinson, sit down.
I won't. You speak of manners, yet you've shown none to our guests. Guests I've invited into our home. You've insulted my guests, insulted my intended.
Don't you dare.
And now you presume to tell me what I will and will not do. No. If they are unwelcome here, then so am I. Clarence, pack my things. I will be leaving.
Yes, Miss Victoria, said a bored-looking servant.
Victoria, if you do this, if you cast your lot in with these mongrels, then I will cut you off. You will no longer be welcome here, and you will surrender all claim to inheritance and home.
And Victoria looked momentarily shaken. But as she looked at Cory, he saw her resolve harden again.
I will send for the rest of my things.
And by the way, Fleur de Mors is a shit wine for those who have no palate. Buy some Moles de Soul or stop pretending you're not drinking for the fun of it.
They were soon outside the gates, Victoria with a bag over her shoulder, still dressed in her gaudy party dress, and the other three looking around like they didn't know what to do now.
Well, I've been kicked out of worse dinner parties. Miss Victoria, I don't suppose cab service comes this far.
Of course,
She said, taking out her phone.
let me just...
Who was that? Daryl said, and Cory turned as the group of shadowy figures came striding up the street. Malcolm turned and all the good humor slipped out of him like piss through a sieve. There were 6 of them. One of them a nearly 7-foot-tall mountain of muscle. And Daryl put himself between Malcolm and the oncoming rush of bodies.
Get out of here, son. But Dad, who? They're here for me, not you or Miss Victoria. Get her out of here while Daryl and I hold them off.
Daryl was cracking his knuckles, walking towards them like he meant to hold off the whole pack. But when they buried him under a wave of fists and snarls, he fell like a scarecrow in a high wind.
Gentlemen, if you would be so kind as to stop manhandling my Renfield, I'm sure we can work this out.
And that's when one of the bruisers, his blonde hair in danger of brushing the underside of a lamppost, grinned down at Malcolm as he stepped away from the group.
Oh, no. You say, you're not gonna weasel out of it this time, Trask. Gabriel says he's taking your territory, and he wants your source for the special blood.
Sorry, but I don't give away my sources. It's a poor businessman who sells his golden goose.
They hear that, boys. So what? You gonna make it on then? Might as well tell us. Gabriel's taking your turf, and there ain't a motherfucking thing that you can...
Malcolm, as if he'd been waiting for the opportunity, drove his hand into the bruiser's nethers, curdling the man's words in his throat as he fell to his knees on the street.
You know, it's funny. No matter how much immortality you get, no one seems to want to get punched in the gonads. So who's next? I'm sure you could all take me in a rush. However, I'm betting none of you are in an all-fired hurry to lose something more permanent than your life. Because trust me, that one bit won't grow back.
The five grouped around Daryl's prone form, looking a little less menacing now. And as Malcolm crossed his arms and grinned, Cory thought that they might come out of this after all.
I didn't imagine there would be a long line. Now I'll ask you again. Release my bondsman and get back to your shallow graves before I...
His words were cut off as someone put their fist through his chest. Cory didn't even see the wounded bruiser move, but his ham-sized fist went through the crushed velvet suit and out the front even as it threw Malcolm to the ground. And Cory started to tell Victoria to run, but she was already hurtling towards Malcolm, fire crackling in her eyes. She took the arm off with a single slash of her hand, the flesh parting easily, but as the bruiser turned and swung at her with his other hand, she rolled agilely out of the way and pushed Malcolm away from the fray. When the arm slammed down and pinned her to the ground, she looked for Cory and found that he had gone.
What? You think he's gonna save you? Keep dreaming, sweetheart. That little fucking dork only good for one thing, and that's running.
The bruiser growled, lifting his hand high even as the others came charging in, intent on burying Victoria and Malcolm under their numbers. Then the town car hit them with the force of 40 miles an hour, and while it crunched the smaller ones in its path and sent the bruiser flying into the nearby tree, Cory pushed the passenger side door open, yelling for them to get in before they could regroup.
We gotta get back to the house. We gotta get some blood in you, get you back on your feet. You'll be right as rain. And... No. We have to help the Mortician. He is in danger because of me. If they wring the answer out of Daryl, then they'll go there next. And I do not want him hurt. Dad, you have a hole in your chest. I'll heal eventually. But we have to do what is right and get him. Dark Prince, when have you ever done what was right, Dad? It's a hell of a time to start, I suppose.
And that is how they came squealing into the parking lot at Garvey's Mortuary at 25 minutes to midnight, and coming upon a front door that had been ripped off its hinges, attached to a home and a business, where the only bodies inside were not alive.